Imagine for a moment that every corner of your home is filled with an invisible yet powerful light, a presence that transforms the ordinary into the sacred, the everyday into the miraculous. Christ in your home is not just a book. It is a guide to discovering how divine love can manifest in your daily life, how every room, every gesture, and every thought can resonate with the energy of the eternal. Based on the profound wisdom of Emmet Fox, this text invites you on a unique journey to learn how to invite the inner Christ into your space, into your home, and allow its light to transform your relationships, your emotions, and your way of living. Here you will discover that true power does not lie in complicated rituals or external formulas, but in the conscious alignment of your mind and spirit with the divine presence that has always been with you. Prepare to feel how peace, love, and clarity begin to radiate from your home into your life, touching everything you cherish and guiding you toward a fuller, brighter, more blessed existence. Open your senses, open your heart, and let the manifestation of divine love begin here, now, with every word you hear. The home, in the eyes of most, is perceived as a simple physical space, a refuge built of bricks, furniture, and daily routines. It is the stage where the most intimate acts of existence unfold: birth, upbringing, illness, reconciliation, celebration, and departure. Yet, in the depth of spiritual experience, the home is far more than its visible form. In truth, it is the first and deepest field for the manifestation of the Spirit, the laboratory where the degree of divine consciousness animating each human being is revealed, tested, and expanded. There is no other space in life where the effects of thoughts, emotions, and words are as swift, powerful, and revealing as in the intimacy of the family environment. The central foundation of this work is the premise that the inner Christ, that divine spark present in all beings, though often veiled by habit and distraction, manifests first and foremost in the quality of relationships, in the emotional climate, and in the spiritual and material prosperity of the home. Where the presence of God is recognized, invoked, and practiced in daily life, the entire family is transformed. Wounds begin to heal, communication opens, abundance finds unexpected channels, and the atmosphere becomes infused with peace, creativity, and joy, even in the midst of trials. Conversely, the materialistic view of the home, reducing it to a field of immediate gratifications, accumulation of goods, or mere functional coexistence, turns the family nucleus into a ground of conflict, routine, and disillusionment. When domestic life is based only on habit, competition, or the pursuit of pleasure and power, relationships become fragile, small disagreements are magnified, and the home loses its regenerative and protective power. Spiritual perception elevates every daily act, preparing a meal, a conversation at the end of the day, resolving a conflict, celebrating an achievement, or offering a blessing in adversity. All are lifted to a sacred plane, giving meaning and purpose to what may seem insignificant. The home then becomes an invisible sanctuary, an altar without walls, where every encounter and every gesture is an opportunity to experience and share God's love, wisdom, and presence. The importance of mental vigilance and active love as guardians of this sanctuary cannot be overstated. The domestic atmosphere, more than any preaching or theory, is the field where the destiny of those present and of future generations is both sown and harvested. Ask yourself, what is the dominant mental climate in my home? What words and thoughts circulate silently among its members? What would our lives be like if Christ were the reference point in every reaction and every decision? The everyday experiences of families transformed through love, prayer, and blessing bear witness to the silent power of this invisible sanctuary. Where once fear, criticism, or indifference reigned, joy, understanding, and forgiveness begin to take root. Where habit had stifled creativity, inspiration, and the possibility of new beginnings emerge. As 1 Corinthians 13 proclaims, "Love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails." Upon this foundation, visible or not, is built the only home that endures and blesses. The invisible sanctuary, where Christ is life lived, not merely belief remembered. Christ in the home, the hidden power of family blessing, based on the teachings of Emmet Fox. We've noticed that more than 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and giving the video a like. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. The Home as God's Sanctuary. For most men and women, the home seems to be merely a material refuge, a set of walls that shield from the weather, a roof under which one seeks rest and protection, a collection of objects, habits, and routines repeated day after day. Yet beneath the surface of daily life, the home is far more than the sum of its material elements. In truth, it is the first visible temple where the true relationship between the human being and God is practiced, lived, and revealed. There, through relationships, actions, and words, the degree of spiritual consciousness attained is expressed. Everything experienced in the outer world, the social climate, work, friendship, success, or conflict, is but a reflection, often magnified, of what is conceived and matured within the invisible atmosphere of the home. The notion of the home as God's sanctuary calls for a complete re-examination of the meaning we assign to the family space. It is not enough to accept this idea intellectually. It must be understood with clarity that every room, every object, every relationship, and every activity can be either consecrated or profaned by the attitude, intention, and quality of awareness of those who inhabit the place. When one recognizes that the divine presence is not limited to temples built of stone, nor revealed only during religious acts, but permeates every instant and every corner of the home, the experience of domestic life begins to transform. The home ceases to be a battleground of opposing interests and becomes the stage for the daily revelation of the inner Christ. The essential difference between a spiritual home and a materialistic one can be observed in the visible fruits that each produces. A materialistic home, governed by concern for appearances, the accumulation of goods, rivalry, fear of scarcity, or the pursuit of immediate pleasure, inevitably generates anxiety, recurring tensions, emotional distance among its members, and a general climate of dissatisfaction, even when material resources are abundant. Competition, criticism, complaint, and mechanical routine are symptoms of a household where consciousness is disconnected from its spiritual source. Objects become ends rather than means. Relationships turn into battlegrounds, and words become weapons of power or manipulation. In contrast, a home consecrated as a sanctuary of God is distinguished above all by the quality of the mental and emotional atmosphere that fills its rooms. The presence of the inner Christ, when recognized and nurtured, even by one single member, establishes an atmosphere of peace, acceptance, respect, and creativity that withstands any crisis. It is not a perfect home, free from challenges or conflicts, but rather a space where every difficulty becomes an opportunity to practice patience, forgiveness, generosity, and communion. Spirituality is not an addition to life. It is the very substance that permeates daily existence and transforms it from within. The difference can be seen in how disagreements are resolved, how joy is celebrated, and how one faces pain, illness, or loss. To consecrate the home as a sanctuary, it is essential to adopt a conscious attitude of daily dedication and openness to the influence of Christ. This begins with the explicit decision to see every space and every relationship as an expression of the divine presence. A practical exercise is to walk through each room of the house at least once a week, saying aloud a brief prayer of blessing. I recognize the presence of God in this space. All that is said and done here shall serve peace, goodness, and unity. This simple yet powerful act has a real effect on the mental climate of the household and can be repeated in moments of tension, fatigue, or conflict. The blessing of objects and spaces is another effective practice. Every object in the home, from the simplest utensil to the most treasured piece of furniture, can be seen as an instrument of service and a channel of good. Before using anything, pause for a moment and silently affirm, "May this object serve the highest purpose in this home. May it be a channel of harmony and blessing." The custom of blessing the table before each meal, even with a short phrase, is an ancient practice of opening to divine provision and love. For example, before beginning the meal, one may say, "We recognize that this food is an expression of God's love and provision. We give thanks and bless those who prepared it and those who receive it." This simple family ritual not only transforms the quality of the food received, but creates a field of positive energy and unity among all present. The parable of the neglected home and the consecrated home clearly illustrates the results of both attitudes. Imagine two neighboring houses, identical in structure and comfort. In the first, the day begins with haste and argument. Each person is absorbed in self-interest, and words of criticism outnumber words of encouragement. No one remembers to give thanks or to bless the others. Objects pile up without purpose, fatigue fills the air, and the mental atmosphere is heavy and oppressive. Small conflicts grow, health deteriorates, and prosperity seems blocked, though nothing appears to be lacking from the outside. In the second home, days begin with a brief prayer together, or at least with the silent intention of blessing each family member upon waking. The atmosphere is filled with respect, gratitude, and mutual service. Objects are cared for with attention, and every task, however simple, is performed as though it were a sacred act. When conflict arises, silence is practiced before angry words. When joy comes, it is celebrated with simplicity, and gratitude is shared for every blessing. The difference in the fruits of these two homes after only a few months is unmistakable. One breathes unity, peace, and creativity. The other, tension, exhaustion, and separation. To establish daily practices of openness to Christ's influence is, in essence, the art of remembering at every moment the true nature of the home. A simple method is to begin the day alone, or as a family, with an affirmation. This home is God's sanctuary. Every word, every action, every thought expressed here shall serve peace, health, and prosperity for all. If possible, this affirmation may be written and placed in a visible place, at the entrance, in the kitchen, or in the living room, to reinforce the purpose and bring it to mind throughout the day. The consecration of the home is not a one-time event, but a daily and renewable practice. It may be interrupted by distraction, routine, conflict, or adversity, yet it can always be resumed at any moment through an act of will and faith. It does not depend on material wealth, the size of the house, or the perfection of relationships, but on the degree of conscious presence brought into each ordinary act. It is possible to transform the atmosphere of a home within weeks, even if the family's history has been marked by conflict or discouragement. When even one member assumes the responsibility of blessing, giving thanks, and restoring harmony to each space, the home gradually becomes a source of healing, inspiration, and prosperity. Not only for those who dwell within, but for all who visit or come into contact with it. The fruits of this practice are seen in the recovery of joy, the resolution of old conflicts, the appearance of new opportunities, and the strength to face any challenge. Thus, family life rises above routine and struggle into a state of communion and spiritual revelation, the true essence of Christ's teaching. The invitation is clear. Look upon your home today with new eyes. Recognize each space and each relationship as sacred ground. Take a few minutes to consciously bless every corner. Establish a brief ritual of blessing at meals, and begin each day with an affirmation of purpose. Step by step, the home will cease to be a mere material refuge and will become the living sanctuary where the presence of God becomes visible, transforming not only your family, but the very destiny of your life. Chapter 2. The spiritual identity of each member. One of the fundamental causes of discord, suffering, and disappointment within the family is the limited and superficial way in which we tend to perceive those who live beside us. It is common for parents, children, spouses, and siblings to be seen through the lens of their social roles, shared history, dominant temperament, or past mistakes. The daughter is the responsible one, or the distracted one. The husband is the tireless worker, or the absent one. The father is the provider, or the irritable one. The mother is the self-sacrificing, or the controlling one. Without realizing it, we turn those closest to us into fixed characters in a play we repeat year after year, forgetting their true identity and condemning them and ourselves to relive the same patterns of conflict and disappointment. This way of seeing others, based on labels, memories, and judgments, denies the central truth of every relationship. Each member of the family is, in their essence, an individualized expression of God. The error does not lie in recognizing differences of character, life stages, gifts, and limitations. The error is believing that these surface aspects exhaust the reality of being. Deep within, every person carries the spark of Christ, the divine seed that no mistake, wound, or habit can extinguish. To recognize this truth, not as an abstract belief but as a daily exercise in spiritual perception, is the first step toward true transformation in family relationships. Most recurring conflicts arise from the habit of identifying others solely with their past, with their failures, or with the wounds they may have caused us. The son who made a mistake in adolescence is seen for years through the shadow of that error, even if his life has changed. The wife who went through a period of weakness is judged permanently, without acknowledgement of her effort and growth. The father who was once severe is remembered only for that facet, while the depth and motivations behind his actions are forgotten. This partial and time-bound vision reduces the other to a caricature, making reconciliation and mutual growth impossible. To break this vicious cycle requires a radical change of perception. It means choosing, consciously and persistently, to see every member of the family as a diamond covered with dust. The surface may be clouded by error, pain, fatigue, or negative habit, but the essence remains intact, waiting to be recognized and set free. This spiritual vision requires patience, humility, and the deliberate choice not to react automatically to another's flaws. It means, for example, seeing in the rebellious son a capacity for leadership that longs for guidance and affirmation. In the distant spouse, an unhealed wound that asks for understanding and presence. In the demanding father, a deep desire to protect, misguided perhaps in form, but not in intention. The daily practice of recognizing Christ in every familiar face can begin with a simple exercise of affirmation. Each morning, upon waking, before speaking or listening to another, take a moment to remember inwardly, this person is, in their essence, an expression of God. Beyond their behavior or their history, Christ lives within them. Today I choose to see that divine spark and respond from my own divinity. This affirmation, when repeated consistently, begins to dissolve old judgments and opens the way for new responses to old situations. Self-reflective questions can also be of great help in this process. When was the last time I looked at my family member without the filter of the past? Am I judging today based on old wounds? What aspects of their being do I ignore because I focus only on their faults? How would my attitude change if I remembered that behind their behavior dwells the same divine principle that sustains me? When these questions are answered with sincerity, they create space for compassion, patience, and creativity in daily interactions. Stories of transformation born from a change in perception abound in families that choose to live this way. A mother, after years of conflict with her teenage daughter, decides each night to write down one positive quality she notices in her, no matter how small. Within a few weeks, the relationship begins to shift. The daughter, feeling recognized beyond her rebellion, responds with gestures of trust and cooperation. A husband, weary of endless arguments with his wife, chooses to keep silent and inwardly affirm, "The Christ in me greets the Christ in you." Soon the tension softens and moments of dialogue arise where before there was only resistance. The image of the diamond covered with dust is especially helpful in understanding the transitory nature of faults and limitations. No one rejects a diamond because it is dirty. We know that by cleaning its surface its brilliance returns. Likewise, it is not necessary to deny errors or justify harmful behavior, but it is essential to look beyond them, recognizing the divine potential pulsing within. Spiritual vision does not excuse harm, but neither does it condemn the other to the prison of their past. It is a practical act of faith, a commitment to the redemption of the relationship and the restoration of harmony within the family. In this spirit, affirmations can be accompanied by concrete exercises of inner reconciliation. One powerful practice is to write, without intending to send, a letter to each family member, recognizing their essential worth, giving thanks for their presence, and affirming the decision to see them with new eyes. This seemingly simple act produces real effects on the inner atmosphere and, over time, on the relationship itself. The energy of recognition is often transmitted silently, subtly transforming the mental climate that sustains patterns of conflict. The spiritual identity of each member is the foundation upon which any relationship can be rebuilt, no matter how damaged it may seem. This is not a magical formula or naive idealism. It is the practical application of Christ's central teaching, to see the other as a child of God, bearer of the same dignity, and called to the same destiny of fullness. When this vision is sustained with perseverance, the entire family begins to vibrate on a higher frequency. Mistakes become opportunities for learning, differences, sources of complementarity, pain, the seed of compassion, and love, the guiding principle. Thus, family life is transformed from within. Each conflict becomes a laboratory of redemption, each encounter an opportunity to see and make visible the Christ in the other. The constant practice of this spiritual perception not only heals past wounds, but also prevents the birth of new resentments, for it establishes a foundation of respect, hope, and communion that no crisis can destroy. Ultimately, the family becomes the first and most powerful training ground for unconditional love, profound acceptance, and the living expression of Christ in daily life. Chapter 3. The Power of Intercessory Prayer in the Home. The art of prayer, understood in its highest and most practical sense, is the science of consciously cooperating with the law of good that governs the universe. Within the home, intercessory prayer takes on a vital role, for it is not only a means to transform difficult situations, but also an act of recognizing the Christ in others and aligning ourselves with the divine will in every family relationship. Yet true prayer is often mistaken for the impulse to control, correct, or demand change in others. This confusion, instead of healing conflict, reinforces it, for rather than freeing, it binds. Instead of blessing, it pressures. And instead of affirming the presence of God in each person, it keeps the focus on error and lack. The essential difference between praying for someone and trying to manipulate their behavior lies in the inner attitude from which the act arises. Genuine prayer begins by recognizing the spiritual autonomy of the other. Every member of the family is a free being, endowed with a unique destiny and a direct relationship with God. To pray for a child, a spouse, or a parent does not mean asking that they conform to our wishes or expectations. It means affirming with faith and gratitude that the principle of good is already at work within them, guiding, healing, and revealing the right path for their growth and fulfillment. This kind of prayer is radically different from anxious pleading or self-centered requests. It is a declaration of trust in divine wisdom and love which sustain every human being, regardless of outward appearances. The mental law behind intercessory prayer teaches that every thought, emotion, and word directed toward another person influences, silently but powerfully, the spiritual atmosphere of the relationship. When one prays from a place of judgment or worry, an energy of anxiety or disapproval is sent forth, which only strengthens the obstacle. But affirmative prayer, grounded in the certainty of divine good already active in the other, creates a field of positive energy that supports transformation, even if this is not immediately visible or aligned with our expectations. The effectiveness of intercessory prayer does not depend on repetition or intensity of words, but on the quality of thought and the sincerity of surrender that sustain it. Even when a relationship seems broken, intercessory prayer works silently and deeply. There are countless stories of families restored after years of distance, resentment, or misunderstanding, where the only change was one member's decision to pray with faith, without demanding, without judging, and without losing hope in the restorative power of love. A common example is that of a mother who, instead of arguing endlessly with her rebellious son, chooses each night to visualize him surrounded by light, silently affirming, "I recognize the Christ in you. I trust your process and release my need to control." After some weeks or months, the relationship begins to soften. The young man shows signs of openness, and communication is gradually restored, without long discussions or external pressure. The practice of affirmative prayer can be approached in simple, concrete steps. Choose a quiet moment, away from the urgency of conflict or emotional reaction. Formulate a simple and powerful affirmation, focused not on what you wish to change, but on the other person's essential perfection. Good is at work in you now. Love guides and sustains you. The Christ within you awakens to a new awareness. Visualize the family member as already restored, in peace, in wholeness, without insisting on how or when this will occur. Sincerely release the result to God, letting go of the expectation of immediate change or a specific outcome. This act of release is essential. Prayer is not magic, nor an attempt to manipulate time or another's decisions. It is openness, alignment, and trust in the divine process. Visualization can be a powerful complement. Imagine the person you are praying for bathed in light, smiling, free from the burden that weighs them down, relating to you and others from a place of calm and joy. Do not dwell on painful memories or old wounds. Focus instead on the desired state, as if it were already fulfilled. This mental image, held with quiet perseverance and without tension, helps reprogram the relationship and opens the door to new attitudes and opportunities. The greatest obstacle to intercessory prayer is impatience, the urge for immediate results. It is vital to remember that every soul has its own rhythm, and that freedom is the supreme gift granted by God to each being. True prayer respects this process and remains steadfast even when outer circumstances do not yet reflect change. Ask yourself, am I praying for the other to do what I want or for the highest good to manifest in them? Can I release control and trust divine wisdom even when results take time to appear? Am I willing to be part of the change, transforming my own attitude? Or do I expect only the other to change? A simple prayer for difficult situations might sound like this: God of love and wisdom, I recognize your presence in my loved one. Name. I affirm that the Christ within them is now their guide, healer, and strength. I release all need to control, judge, or demand, and I trust fully in your law at work here and now. I open myself to the peace and restoration that only your love can bring. Thank you, for I know it is already done. Repeated with faith and gratitude, this prayer sustains an energetic field within the home that sooner or later produces visible fruits of reconciliation, understanding, and renewal. Real stories abound of families restored through the quiet power of intercessory prayer. Spouses who resume dialogue after months of silence, estranged siblings who suddenly feel the impulse to reconnect, parents and children who, after years of misunderstanding, discover a new capacity for listening and forgiveness. In all these cases, the common factor is prayer without anxiety, without attachment to outcome, and with the conscious choice to see good beyond appearances. In essence, intercessory prayer within the home is the sacred art of blessing and releasing, of affirming the good in another, and trusting in the invisible power of divine law. It does not require complicated words or long hours of supplication. What it does require is clarity of intention, constancy, and openness to the mystery of spiritual process. Thus, even when family relationships seem difficult or uncertain, the power of genuine prayer prepares the ground for the miracle of restoration and peace, making visible the living Christ who dwells, silent yet unfailing, in the heart of every member of the family. Chapter 4. Love as the Guiding Principle. 1 Corinthians 13 Unveiled. In every home truly restored and enlivened by the Spirit, love occupies the central place and acts as the governing principle, not as a fleeting emotion or a passing convenience. Though this truth is often repeated in words, it is rarely understood or lived in daily experience. The hymn to love in 1 Corinthians 13 offers the most sublime and practical synthesis of what it means to make love the supreme law of family life. It is not a distant ideal, but a concrete guide for embodying day by day the qualities that allow a family to overcome crisis, heal wounds, and grow in unity and purpose. The essential difference between human love and love as a spiritual principle lies in their source and nature. Human love is often conditioned by attraction, sympathy, reciprocity, or the fulfillment of personal needs. It is vulnerable to changing moods, to the memory of offense, to the frustration of expectations. It easily turns into a tool of control, demand, or manipulation. Love as principle, however, is the inexhaustible energy of spirit flowing through the human heart when one chooses to align with the will of God. It does not take offense, nor does it falter in difficulty. It is quite literally patient and kind. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13. And to bring this teaching from the page into practice, each attribute described in the passage must be deeply understood and lived. Patience, for example, is not mere resignation before another's imperfection, but the inner strength that sustains harmony even when circumstances, or people, do not respond at our pace or according to our expectations. To be patient in the home is to listen without interrupting, to wait for another's growth without anxiety, and to resist the temptation to give up when change seems slow or problems recur. Kindness, in turn, is the active readiness to promote the good of others, to create trust, to offer help without seeking reward. Kindness in family life is revealed through small gestures, a gentle tone, an encouraging word, an unnoticed act of service. It is the decision to add peace and well-being in every interaction, even in the smallest details. Freedom from resentment is the fruit of the conscious decision to let go of hurt, offense, and the memory of past failures. It does not mean denying the pain or avoiding necessary dialogue. It means releasing the emotional charge that blocks reconciliation. Practically, it is the choice not to bring up old wounds in every argument and not to meet provocation with equal resistance. A family that practices forgiveness and gratitude lives in an atmosphere of continual renewal, where mistakes become lessons instead of barriers. Perseverance is the quality that distinguishes love as principle from any transient emotion. To persevere in love is to keep both intention and action rooted in love, even when responses are delayed, when trials endure, or when nothing seems to change. It is the will not to abandon the bond or the shared purpose in the face of frustration, fatigue, or routine. To embody these attributes at home, a daily exercise of self-examination can be profoundly helpful. Each night, before sleep, take a few minutes to review the day and ask, was I patient in my dealings with others? Did I express kindness in my words and actions? Did I hold on to resentment, or did I let the past go? Did I persevere in love even when facing discouragement or conflict? This simple reflection, practiced sincerely and without harsh self-judgment, prepares the ground for true and lasting change. It is also essential to replace criticism, resentment, and indifference with conscious acts of love. This begins by identifying the typical moments when negativity arises: after an argument, at the end of a hard day, or when a family member repeats a mistake. In those moments, instead of reacting by old habit, choose a deliberate action. Speak a word of encouragement, perform a quiet act of service, or hold a peaceful silence filled with acceptance and trust in the other's potential for change. The metaphysical translation of 1 Corinthians 13 helps internalize its message as a mental law. Love as principle does not demand, compare, or claim. It gives, understands, and sustains. It is patient with another's growth, generous in forgetting faults. It never exhausts itself, for its source is God, and everything it touches is renewed and lifted to its true nature. True stories abound of families transformed by the steady practice of these attributes. A couple, after years of fruitless arguments, decides to begin each morning with a shared affirmation. Today I choose to love you with patience, kindness, and hope. Within months, the atmosphere changes. Problems still exist, but the tone softens. Responses become creative, not defensive. Two brothers, long divided by an inheritance dispute, choose to see each other as fellow travelers. They begin to speak cautiously, then more freely, until trust is restored and the family regains its unity. To speak the language of love in critical moments, it helps to keep a few responses at hand that interrupt the automatic cycle of negative reaction. When provoked, ask an open question. How can I help you right now? When criticized, respond with constructive openness. Thank you for pointing that out. How do you think I can do better? When tension rises, propose a pause or a respectful silence, remembering inwardly, love is my answer, even if it's not the easiest one at this moment. Ultimately, the difference between a home ruled by human love and one governed by love as principle lies in endurance, resilience, and the power to begin again after every crisis. Love as principle cannot fail, because it does not depend on immediate results or on others' responses. By its very nature, it is the law of life, growth, and restoration. Where this love is practiced and affirmed, the impossible becomes possible. Even in the midst of difficulty, the family flourishes and bears witness to the redemptive power of the living Christ within the home. Thus, the daily practice of the attributes of love described in 1 Corinthians 13 forms the central discipline of the restored household. This is not idealism, nor denial of reality. It is the conscious exercise of the freedom to choose in every situation the highest response. That choice is the sure path to peace, unity, and enduring prosperity in family life. Chapter 5. The Word and the Silence, the Family's Mental Climate. The emotional and mental atmosphere of a home is the result of countless words, spoken, heard, and repeated throughout the days, weeks, and years. Every word, even the most insignificant, plants an invisible seed that in time bears fruit in the collective atmosphere of the family. The spoken word, far from being a mere tool of communication, is a creative force shaping the very reality of domestic life. Experience shows that where criticism, complaint, sarcasm, and verbal indifference abound, the air grows heavy, tense, and weary, even when nothing outwardly serious seems to be happening. By contrast, a home where blessing, gratitude, and constructive silence are cultivated breathes harmony, openness, and restoration, even amid the ordinary challenges of daily living. The impact of the spoken word upon family life may be subtle, yet devastating. The habit of criticism, often disguised as concern or honesty, erodes self-esteem, creates emotional distance, and feeds resentments that eventually turn into open conflict or cold detachment. Constant complaining, whether about small matters or real problems, installs within the home an atmosphere of helplessness, victimhood, and chronic dissatisfaction. Sarcasm, though it may appear witty, wounds sensitivity and undermines trust, especially in the young, who unconsciously learn that vulnerability is something to mock, not to welcome. And verbal indifference, the silence that does not listen, the empty monosyllable, the shallow conversation that avoids what matters, creates a void, a sense of neglect that suffocates intimacy and cooperation. The power of the word can be witnessed in countless examples of families transformed when they decide, deliberately, to change their daily language. A father who, after years of harsh correction, begins to thank and praise his children for small achievements, soon observes a remarkable improvement in their attitude, motivation, and confidence. A couple in crisis, committed to avoid negative phrases and to begin each day with a mutual blessing, gradually rediscovers trust and shared joy. It is neither magic nor coincidence. The word, when chosen and spoken with awareness, reconfigures the psychic atmosphere of the home, healing old wounds and opening new paths of understanding and growth. The importance of blessing, gratitude, and constructive silence as generators of harmony and restoration cannot be overstated. Blessing, far from being a religious formality, is the conscious affirmation of good in another person and in the present moment. To say, "I bless you," or "I bless this meal, this gathering, this day," is to declare in word and intention that you recognize the presence of God acting here and now. Gratitude expressed through simple phrases: "Thank you for your help," "I appreciate your patience," "I value your effort," multiplies goodwill and strengthens the sense of belonging and cooperation. Constructive silence, on the other hand, is the art of keeping quiet when words might wound, confuse, or add tension, and of reserving speech for moments of clarity and service. It is not evasion nor passivity, but active discernment, knowing when to speak and when to wait, when to confront and when to remain still. To transform family language, practical exercises can be immensely helpful. Observation. For 1 week, notice the phrases you repeat most often at home, especially in moments of stress or routine. Write them down. Are they words of encouragement, criticism, complaint, or indifference? Replacement. Consciously choose to replace a common negative phrase with a positive affirmation. Instead of saying, "You're always late," say, "I value it when you're on time, and I appreciate your effort to be here." Blessing. Establish the daily habit of blessing before leaving the house or before bedtime. Bless each family member aloud or silently and give thanks for something good that happened that day. Restorative silence. Agree on short daily periods when problems will not be discussed and criticism will be set aside. In those moments, share music, read together, or simply sit in each other's company without the need to fill the air with words. This shared silence, far from creating distance, allows the mind and heart to rest, to open, and to recover their capacity to listen and respond with wisdom. A simple guide of family blessings might include short, yet powerful phrases such as, "I bless your path today. May you find peace and joy. We bless this food source of health and unity for our family. May patience and understanding accompany us this day. I give thanks for your presence in my life." Repeated with sincerity and consistency, such words create a mental and emotional habit that gradually transforms the home's atmosphere. It is also helpful to keep 2 lists, phrases to avoid and phrases to cultivate. To avoid, "You never change. You always get it wrong. I'm tired of you. I don't care. To cultivate, I trust you. I know you can. Thank you. How can I help? I'm glad to see you. I'm here to listen. The difference in the family climate becomes unmistakable when, with perseverance, the focus shifts from criticism to appreciation, from complaint to gratitude, from sarcasm to respect. The power of word and silence is ultimately the power to create or destroy, to unite or divide, to heal or to wound. No material change, no external progress can substitute the inner work of vigilance and transformation in our daily language. A family that makes of the word an instrument of blessing and of silence, a space of renewal, becomes a true sanctuary, where the presence of God is not a distant idea, but a tangible reality in everyday life. The challenge is within reach of every home. To begin today, observing, choosing, and consecrating each word, to establish brief moments of restorative silence, to cultivate the habits of blessing and gratitude. Thus, the mental climate of the family becomes fertile ground for healing, joy, and the visible expression of the Christ in domestic life. Chapter 6. Family Conflicts, Opportunities for Redemption. The habitual tendency to view family conflict as a failure, a sign of weakness or decay, is one of the main reasons why so many families remain trapped in resentment, guilt, and hopelessness. Yet every truly spiritual vision of the home teaches that conflict, far from being an ending or a defeat, is often a necessary process, and in many cases the only possible doorway to redemption, learning, and deep growth. The family is the stage upon which the inner forces governing the human mind and heart are revealed, magnified, and accelerated. Where there is close living, differences, tensions, wounds, and crises inevitably arise. But it is the way these moments are faced that determines the true destiny of the group and the quality of life of its members. The first step in transforming the experience of conflict is to recognize that mental patterns, both conscious and unconscious, either perpetuate or dissolve discord. It is common when faced with a painful situation, a repeated argument, a cold silence, a long-standing misunderstanding, for the mind to react automatically, anchoring itself in blame, obsessive remembrance of the offense, fear of change, or resignation. These patterns reinforce separation and cause family members to repeat again and again the same dialogues, the same emotions, and the same results. Conflict then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What is feared is drawn back. What is judged grows stronger. What is silenced hardens within. To deactivate these mechanisms, it is necessary to introduce spiritual strategies that allow us to see conflict from a higher plane, transforming the experience of pain into an opportunity for redemption. One of these resources is detachment. Detachment means, first of all, to renounce the need to be right, to have others change according to our wishes, to control the process, or to impose our own point of view. It is not indifference or passivity, but the conscious decision to release control and open oneself to the possibility that divine wisdom may reveal unexpected paths of reconciliation and healing. When one family member practices detachment, tension diminishes, and space is created for solutions to emerge from calm and openness, rather than from defensive reaction or attack. Another essential strategy is prayer, instead of confrontation. When the impulse arises to argue, justify, attack, or defend, the practice of silent prayer is proposed. The Christ in me blesses and understands the Christ in you. May peace and good manifest here and now. Repeated in moments of tension, this act changes the vibration of the relationship, preparing the ground for constructive dialogue. It does not always produce immediate results, but it ensures that the mind and heart remain open to the higher way, avoiding the vicious circle of attack and defense. Anticipatory forgiveness is an advanced yet profoundly transformative discipline. It means deciding, before the conflict reaches its peak, to forgive the offense, release the grievance, and affirm the will to reconcile, even if the other person does not change or acknowledge their error. Anticipatory forgiveness is not denial of harm. It is acceptance of the human process and trust in the restorative power of love. In practice, it means avoiding the accumulation of resentments, not keeping a record of others' faults, and offering gestures of approach, even when they are not reciprocated. There are many examples of families that renewed their destiny through crisis. A family divided by inheritance, unable to speak for years, finds reconciliation when one sibling decides to write an unsent letter of forgiveness, acknowledging shared pain and declaring the will to release the past. Soon after, the atmosphere softens, unexpected calls occur, and little by little the relationship is restored on a new level of maturity. Another common case is that of parents and children estranged by differences in values. A mother, instead of pressuring her son, prays daily for his well-being, affirming her faith in the guidance of the Christ within. Sensing that vibration, the son gradually opens to communication, and the family discovers a new kind of relationship, one based less on correction and more on respect and trust. Self-examination of hidden causes is indispensable to understand the true origin of conflict. Ask yourself, what unfulfilled desire or unacknowledged fear is fueling this dispute? Am I repeating patterns inherited from my own childhood, projecting unresolved resentments onto others? What unconscious advantage do I gain by keeping the conflict alive, to feel like a victim, to be right, to avoid deep change? Honesty in these questions opens doors to healing that no superficial technique can achieve. The parable of the family and the storm can serve as a guide. A house battered by winds and rain will stand only if its foundations are firm. If the family members unite and seek refuge in prayer, patience, and forgiveness, the storm does not destroy. It strengthens and purifies, allowing the home to emerge renewed and more united than before. In practice, writing unsent letters of forgiveness is a powerful tool. Write what you never dared to say. Express the pain, the love, the disappointment, and the hope, even if only you read it. This releases stagnant energy and allows the mind to let go of the repetitive cycle of complaint and blame. Often after this exercise, one's attitude changes so deeply that the other person responds, without knowing why, with greater openness and willingness to communicate. In conclusion, family conflicts, far from being insurmountable obstacles, are the raw material of redemption and spiritual learning within the home. Those who face them with a higher vision, humility, and faith discover in them the opportunity to release old patterns, to grow in compassion, and to build relationships that are freer, deeper, and more authentic. Thus the family becomes a true laboratory of transformation, where the indwelling Christ reveals himself, restoring what seemed lost and creating a new era of communion, peace, and shared joy. Chapter 7. Forgiveness as a Restorative Force. In every family experience marked by wounds, misunderstandings, and resentment, forgiveness emerges as the supreme agent of restoration and rebirth. There is no domestic conflict, however deep, nor emotional wound, however old it may seem, that cannot be healed and redeemed by the transformative power of forgiveness. Yet this principle, so often proclaimed as indispensable, is in practice one of the most resisted and misunderstood. Deeply rooted myths about memory, anger, personal pride, and the supposed impossibility of forgetting often block access to the true liberating power of forgiveness. First of all, it is necessary to dismantle the belief that to forgive is to forget, justify, or excuse the harm received. Authentic forgiveness does not deny the fact, minimize it, nor demand immediate reconciliation with the one who caused pain. To forgive is essentially to release the emotional weight attached to the grievance, freeing the mind and heart from the need to continue living from the wound, and restoring to oneself the freedom to choose peace and wholeness over resentment and the slavery of the past. Forgiveness is not weakness nor submission, but the most radical act of self-mastery and spiritual maturity, for it implies the voluntary renunciation of the right to punish, to seek revenge, or to perpetuate the cycle of pain in memory and daily behavior. Another common myth associates forgiveness with betrayal of oneself, or with forgetting the offense. It is mistakenly believed that remembering is necessary for protection, and that letting go of pain is equivalent to denying justice or losing dignity. In reality, the memory of the grievance, when not processed through love, becomes a prison that conditions every gesture, word, and decision, binding the individual and the family to an endless repetition of conflict. Pride, for its part, acts as a defense of the wounded ego, but in time it isolates, hardens, and weakens bonds, turning the home into a battlefield where everyone loses. True dignity lies in choosing inner freedom and restoration over the satisfaction of being right or settling old scores. The inner process of forgiveness follows a precise dynamic. although it varies in time and form for each person. It begins with honest recognition of the wound and the pain, avoiding denial or excessive rationalization. It continues with the conscious decision to release the grievance, even when emotion persists or the mind resists forgetting. The next step is the deliberate act of surrendering the situation, the person, and the pain to the wisdom and love of God, renouncing control over the process and trusting in the real possibility of transformation, even if external reconciliation is not immediate or even possible. Finally, forgiveness is consolidated in the daily practice of replacing the recurring thought of the grievance with affirmations of peace, gratitude, and blessing, remembering that all healing is progressive and that the constant repetition of the act of forgiving gradually dissolves, layer by layer, the root of resentment. The effects of forgiveness transcend the individual act and silently radiate throughout the family atmosphere and the consciousness of each member. A single person willing to forgive can, without words or visible gestures, begin a process of collective healing. The energy released through forgiveness, the inner peace, openness to dialogue, willingness to serve, and renewed joy, becomes contagious and often brings about, in surprising ways, a shift in the attitudes and emotions of others. The family is a living, sensitive system. What one releases in the heart resonates through the entire environment. To forgive from a distance, when direct contact is not possible or advisable, there exists a simple and effective practice. Dedicate a few minutes each day to visualizing the person involved surrounded by light, whole, and at peace. Imagine a bond of love and gratitude between you, even if the mind resists or the emotions contradict the image. Silently repeat, "I release you and I release myself. I bless you and I bless myself, and the past is now in God's hands, and I open my life to renewed peace and joy." When practiced with constancy, this exercise gradually dissolves the weight of the offense and opens unexpected paths toward reconciliation. Writing unsent letters of forgiveness is another powerful resource for releasing the family past. In the letter, express all that you have kept silent, the pain, the anger, the disappointment, but also the love, understanding, and desire for peace. Do not edit or censor yourself. Do not think about the effect it might have on the other person. Write from the heart, only for yourself and your process of liberation. Once finished, read the letter aloud, pray over the situation, and consciously decide to release it. You may burn it as a symbol of surrender and closure, or keep it as a testimony of your decision to live in freedom. A meditation to release old grievances can also be practiced through these steps. Find a quiet place, close your eyes and breathe slowly. Recall the offense, recognizing the emotion without resistance. Visualize the person or situation within a circle of light. Repeat inwardly, "I acknowledge the pain, I accept the experience and choose to release the past. I allow God's peace to heal and restore my heart." Remain in silence for a few minutes, letting the sensation of release settle into your mind and body. Stories of liberation through forgiveness abound in genuine spiritual experience. A father, after years of estrangement from his son, decides to pray each night for him and bless him in silence, discovering, without seeking it, an unexpected opportunity for dialogue and reconciliation. A daughter, after decades of resentment toward her mother, practices visualization and writes an unsent letter. For the first time, she feels compassion and gratitude, freeing herself from the weight that bound her to the past. Entire families, practicing collective forgiveness, witness the rebirth of joy and creativity in the home, even when external circumstances have not radically changed. Forgiveness, then, is the most powerful restorative force available to the human family. It requires no prior conditions, depends on no one's response, and demands not the total erasure of the past, but the constant decision to live in inner freedom and openness to good. Wherever forgiveness is practiced, the presence of God becomes visible, and the home becomes the first living testimony of the redeeming power of Christ in daily life. Chapter 8. The Shared Table, Rituals, Gratitude, and Provision. At the heart of every home lies the table, that seemingly ordinary space where day after day the family gathers to share food, conversation, and daily experiences. However, what is often perceived as a routine act is, from a spiritual perspective, a sacred ritual and a daily opportunity for restoration, gratitude, and manifestation of divine provision. The shared table is not merely the place where physical needs are satisfied, but the true family altar, the meeting point where unity is strengthened, values are transmitted, and the presence of God is tangibly and silently revealed in domestic life. The importance of the table as an altar lies in its ability to transform the ordinary into the sacred, the routine into the extraordinary. Every meal is an opportunity to remember that the food we receive is an expression of divine generosity and human labor, and that sitting together at the table is a privilege and an occasion for profound communion. When the table is blessed and food is received with gratitude, the family atmosphere elevates, dialogue softens, and coexistence transforms. Conversely, when the act of eating is done in discord, haste, or mechanical silence, the invisible effects are felt in the quality of relationships and the overall environment of the home. Recurring arguments at the table, the habit of eating without true presence, everyone isolated in their own world, or rushing through the meal as a mere task, gradually erode family unity, joy, and vitality. It is necessary to honestly examine the invisible effects of these practices. Eating in discord imprints tension on the mind and body, affecting digestion, health, and mood. Haste turns food into a burden, depriving the family of the calm and serenity needed to face the day's challenges. Mechanical silence, where each person retreats into their own thoughts or distractions unrelated to the meal, creates an emotional void that, over time, can lead to isolation and a loss of belonging. In light of this, the proposal is to recover the sense of ritual at the shared table. This does not mean adding unnecessary formalities or imposing rigid practices, but establishing simple, conscious gestures that transform the daily experience. The first step is blessing the food. Before beginning the meal, take a few moments to give thanks aloud or silently for the food received, for those who prepared it, for those who share it, and for the divine provision that sustains the family. A brief prayer, adapted to each household's reality, could be, "We acknowledge that this food comes from God and the work of many hands. We bless this meal, this moment, and each person present. May peace and abundance remain in our home." Shared gratitude during meals is another transformative practice. Invite each family member, even once a week, to express something they are grateful for. This encourages openness, trust, and awareness of present blessings. The practice can be simple. At the end of the meal, each person shares in a few words a reason for gratitude related to the day, the family, or any aspect of life. Maintained over time, this habit can reverse patterns of complaint and negativity and instill a positive, receptive energy in the family atmosphere. The spiritual significance of nourishing body and soul in communion goes beyond satisfying a biological need. Eating together is an act of reciprocity and mutual service. Someone prepared the food, another set the table, all participate, and in that exchange the art of giving and receiving is practiced. But beyond visible gestures, the table is the setting where values, beliefs, and emotions, often unconsciously, are transmitted, shaping each member for life. A child raised in a family where meals are occasions of gratitude, dialogue, and celebration will learn to associate food with abundance, unity, and joy. An adult deprived of this environment may tend to repeat patterns of haste, isolation, and discord, unless consciously creating a new ritual in their own home. Countless examples show the transformative power of restoring the ritual of shared meals. Families who, after years of routine and distance, begin to bless the table, put away electronic devices, and talk about the day, notice in a few weeks a significant improvement in communication, trust, and overall well-being. Other families facing economic hardship experience the miracle of provision by practicing daily gratitude and blessing even the smallest amount of food. Discovering that true abundance comes from recognition and joy in sharing, not from quantity or variety of resources, blessing prayers can be adapted to the moment and reality. For breakfast, give thanks for the new day and the food that sustains us. May every action and word be a blessing for our family and all beings. For the main meal, acknowledge the effort and love put into the food. Bless those who prepared it and ask that bread never be lacking on this table or in any home. For dinner, give thanks for the day lived and the opportunity to gather once more. May peace and rest restore our bodies and spirits. Renewing the table as the family's spiritual center also involves small acts that reinforce a sense of community. Preparing a special meal together. inviting someone in need, remembering family stories, celebrating each person's achievements, simply being present, attentive, and available to listen and share. It is not the length of time nor the perfection of the ritual that transforms, but the intention and consistency with which it is practiced. A home that makes the table an altar, the meal a ritual of gratitude, and food a channel of divine provision, establishes an invisible but firm foundation for peace, prosperity, and family unity. Where gratitude, blessing, and communion are present, the Spirit of Christ manifests silently, yet powerfully, renewing daily life and making even the simplest act the foundation of a new, shared life. Chapter 9. Family Cycles, Crises, Losses, and Renewals. Family life, like all truly human experiences, is marked by inevitable cycles of change, loss, growth, and crisis. No home remains static. What is presence and stability today may become absence and transformation tomorrow. Family cycles, births, departures, illnesses, grief, reconciliations, successes, and failures are the raw material with which the group's destiny is woven and the character of each member is forged. Denying or resisting these cycles leads to frustration and prolonged suffering. Embracing them consciously allows each stage to be lived as an opportunity for revelation, spiritual maturation, and a deeper, more meaningful life. The birth of a new member, whether a child, grandchild, or even an adopted or welcomed person, initiates a cycle of expansion, learning, and adjustment. It is a time of joy, anticipation, and renewal of roles and relationships. However, even the arrival of life brings its own challenges. Fatigue, uncertainty, changes in routines and priorities, new responsibilities, and sometimes old, unresolved wounds. Approaching this cycle with the vision of Christ in the home means receiving life as a gift and accepting the call to grow in love, generosity, and flexibility. A simple yet powerful prayer could be, "We bless this new life and open ourselves to the learning and growth it brings. May peace and wisdom accompany us in this new cycle." The departure of a family member, due to moving, independence, travel, or separation, marks another cycle of adjustment and transformation. Families often experience mixed emotions: joy for the growth of the one leaving, sadness for their absence, fear of change, and sometimes guilt or resentment for words left unsaid or unresolved issues. Approaching this cycle as an opportunity for spiritual maturation means releasing attachment, blessing the other's path, and opening to new forms of relationship. It can be helpful to establish farewell and welcome rituals, a special meal, a blessing letter, a shared prayer, or simply a moment of silence and gratitude for the time spent together. Illness, whether physical, emotional, or mental, tests the faith, patience, and solidarity of the family. It is one of the most challenging cycles because it often awakens old fears, accumulated resentments, and the temptation toward despair. Yet it is also one of the greatest opportunities to experience the healing presence of Christ in the home. Caring for a sick member, sustaining hope in times of uncertainty, or simply accompanying someone in pain without demanding immediate solutions are exercises of compassion and surrender that transcend any doctrine or religious practice. A short prayer in times of crisis might be, "We recognize the presence of God amidst this trial. We ask for wisdom, strength, and peace. We open ourselves to the healing and learning this stage brings." In illness, the family discovers the depth of its bonds, the value of selfless service, and the ability to grow together even amid suffering. Grief over the loss of a loved one is perhaps the deepest and most transformative cycle. No words or formulas can remove the pain of absence, but there are resources to navigate mourning with consent and openness to mystery. Creating farewell rituals, a prayer, a letter, a family gathering to share memories and bless the life of the departed, helps transform grief into gratitude, allowing memory to become a source of wisdom rather than bitterness. A positive rereading of family history through stories, photographs, or shared moments of silence facilitates integration of loss and opens the way for new stages of growth and unity. To face pain without losing sight of Christ in the process, it is essential to maintain a practice of prayer and meditation that sustains hope and trust, even amid confusion or anguish. Ask yourself in each difficult cycle, what hidden meaning might this stage hold? What lesson, growth, or redemption is it inviting me to discover? Where is the silent presence of good revealed amid the crisis? Sincerely asking these questions opens the heart to the possibility of finding light where previously there was only darkness. Stories of overcoming loss testify that beyond initial pain, it is possible to experience renewal, learning, and a fuller life. A family that, after the death of a member, chooses to gather yearly to honor their memory, share achievements and challenges, and bless new members transforms grief into celebration and emptiness into opportunity for unity. Another family, after a painful separation, decides to practice forgiveness, intercessory prayer, and gratitude for what was lived. They discover a new way of relating and openness to future cycles of joy. In practice, farewell and welcome rituals can take many forms. Planting a tree in honor of the loved one, writing a blessing letter for someone leaving or arriving, lighting a candle and dedicating a few minutes to gratitude and remembrance. These simple actions help the family integrate change, release the past, and open to the constant renewal that characterizes life. The exercise of positively rereading family history involves reviewing difficult moments, not to deny the pain, but to discover the invisible thread of growth, learning, and revelation that connects them. Ask yourself, what positive changes arose from that crisis? What gifts, virtues, or relationships emerged from that loss or illness? How did that stage prepare me to face new challenges or better serve others? Family life is a weaving of cycles, crises, losses, and renewals. The difference between a home that crumbles and one that flourishes lies in the attitude with which inevitable changes are faced, where each stage is lived as an opportunity for revelation, where prayer is practiced in times of crisis, farewell and welcome rituals are created, and family history is reread with eyes of gratitude and hope. Christ becomes visible, and the family becomes a school of wisdom, resilience, and love. Chapter 10. Healing the Inheritance, Ancestral Patterns, and Liberation. In every family, the inheritance received is much more than the transmission of material goods or visible customs. Each generation, consciously or unconsciously, passes down a wealth of mental, emotional, and spiritual patterns that can either enrich and expand or limit and condition the development of their descendants. The history of a family is a woven tapestry of achievements and failures, fulfilled dreams and unresolved frustrations, transmitted virtues and repeated mistakes. Without conscious work, these patterns perpetuate themselves from one generation to the next, embedding in the present ancient wounds, beliefs of lack, fear, or guilt, and ways of experiencing love, success, or pain that do not stem from current reality, but from ancestral memories lodged in the family mind and heart. Recognizing that the family transmits, alongside its assets and values, these invisible structures of thought and emotion reveals the true scope of personal responsibility and power in the healing of the home. Ancestral patterns can manifest as recurring economic difficulties, psychosomatic family illnesses, emotional blocks, repeated conflicts between parents and children, and even seemingly predetermined destinies of loneliness, sacrifice, or resignation. Identifying these patterns requires honest observation and self-examination. What phrases, attitudes, and reactions are repeated in my family? What beliefs about money, love, illness, or authority have passed from grandparents to parents and from parents to children? Which unfulfilled dreams cast shadows over present expectations or fears? The first step in neutralizing and releasing these patterns is awareness. Nothing can be healed while it remains in the shadow of the unconscious or the denied. Observing the threads that link the present with family history, without guilt or victimhood, is the beginning of every liberation process. Writing a brief family history can be very useful, recording events and emotions, cycles of abundance and scarcity, harmonious relationships and prolonged conflicts, inherited phrases such as, "In this house, everything costs twice as much," "Love always hurts, no one understands us," etc. Making the pattern visible weakens its automatic power and opens the door to conscious change. Affirmative prayer is the central instrument for restoring the flow of life in the family and blessing the family tree. Unlike complaint or denial, conscious prayer recognizes the existence of the pattern while affirming the supremacy of good and the mind and spirit's capacity to regenerate the inherited legacy. A powerful affirmation could be, "I declare that in my family, here and now, all chains of pain, limitation, and scarcity are broken. I honor my ancestors, bless their memory, and release the past. The love and wisdom of God restore our tree and open new paths of prosperity, peace, and fulfillment. Visualizing the family tree as a field of blessing is another profoundly effective practice. Sit in silence and picture a large tree before you with deep roots and branches reaching toward the light. See your ancestors at the base, your parents and their generation in the trunk, and your life and descendants in the branches. Imagine a stream of golden light descending from above, flowing through every root, branch, and leaf, healing, illuminating, and releasing every shadow, painful memory, and limiting pattern. Affirm as you breathe, life flows freely and abundantly in my family tree. The good of God circulates without obstacles. I give thanks, release, and renew my inheritance. Honoring ancestors and releasing the weight of the past does not mean denying history or erasing the memory of those who came before. It means thanking for the gift of life, recognizing achievements and virtues passed down, and choosing not to perpetuate errors, struggles, or lacks that no longer serve the purpose of the current family. A practical exercise is to create a simple altar with photographs, names, or symbols of ancestors. In front of it, express aloud or in writing, "Thank you for life, for the teachings, for the effort and love received. I recognize the good and release what no longer belongs to my path. I ask for God's blessing to transform this inheritance into a source of peace, health, and prosperity for all generations." The ritual of gratitude and detachment can be as simple as lighting a candle, praying silently, and imagining the weight of the past dissolving into light and the presence of the Spirit. When practiced regularly, monthly on significant dates, or during moments of crisis, the family experiences a gradual renewal of the environment, lighter relationships, and openness to new possibilities, previously blocked by past inertia. Examples of liberating ancestral chains abound in the experience of families who have applied these principles. One common case is families who, after generations of economic conflict, achieve prosperity when a member decides to bless the ancestors, affirm abundance, and release the fear of scarcity. Other testimonies describe the healing of chronic illnesses or patterns of separation when the family origin of the symptom is recognized and blessed, accompanied by prayers of liberation and gratitude. The metaphor of the regenerated family tree illustrates this process. It is not about cutting the roots, but healing the soil, pruning dead branches, fertilizing the ground, and allowing new sap to circulate and renew every leaf and fruit. Thus, the inheritance becomes a fertile field of life, creativity, and love, and the family, instead of being imprisoned by the past, becomes a channel of blessing for the present and future. Healing the family inheritance is the task of each generation and the responsibility of every conscious member. Where patterns of pain and limitation are identified and released, where ancestors are honored and good is affirmed, Christ acts to restore and renew the family tree. The result is a new flow of health, abundance, and joy that extends far beyond individual experience, leaving a legacy of light and freedom for generations to come. Chapter 11. Spiritual Parenting, Planting Awareness in New Generations. The task of guiding, educating, and accompanying children and young people within the family is both a responsibility and a privilege of immense proportions. On the surface, parenting may seem limited to physical care, transmission of social norms and values, and preparation for the challenges of the world. However, in its deepest dimension, parenting is planting awareness, introducing the new generation to the mystery and practice of divine presence, making the Christ within visible in daily acts, words, and decisions. What is sown in childhood and adolescence endures far beyond the home, becoming a living inheritance for society as a whole. Planting Christ consciousness does not mean imposing dogmas or demanding mechanical repetition of religious formulas or external traditions. On the contrary, authentic spirituality is communicated first through example, through the mental and emotional climate that adults establish in the home, and through trust in the child's innate capacity to recognize and express goodness. Educating without dogmatism means teaching through daily testimony. Children learn to pray by seeing their parents pray with naturalness and depth. They understand the importance of forgiveness when they experience it offered and received at home. They recognize the value of gratitude and blessing when these attitudes permeate family conversations and the dining table. Protecting the innocence of children and young people without falling into overprotection or imposition is one of the most delicate balances in spiritual parenting. Overprotection, although born of love, limits trust in the child's ability to face life and learn from personal experience. Imposing beliefs, on the other hand, generates rejection, superficiality, or double standards. The spiritual path requires deep respect for the rhythm, personality, and freedom of the other, even when it concerns one's own children. It means offering guidance, boundaries, and resources, but also space for questions, doubt, and personal exploration. Practices to plant spiritual awareness in the home are as simple as they are powerful. Shared prayer before sleep at the start of the day, or in the face of difficulties, establishes a channel of unity and trust. It can be spontaneous prayer, an act of thanksgiving, or a simple request for help and guidance for all members. The habit of telling uplifting stories, where courage, compassion, faith, and perseverance triumph over fear and adversity, nourishes imagination and plants seeds of hope and courage. Creating sacred spaces at home, such as a small altar with symbols, a candle to pray together, or a quiet corner for reading, helps children and adolescents recognize the importance of the invisible and cultivate inner presence. A model for daily spiritual dialogue can be developed through simple, open-ended questions. Why do you think this happened today? How did you feel when you helped your friend? Why do you think it is important to ask for forgiveness or give thanks? When asked without judgment and with genuine interest, these questions awaken in children the capacity for reflection, self-knowledge, and openness to higher wisdom. Family affirmation exercises constitute another tool of profound impact. At the start of the day, the family can recite together an affirmation such as, "We are a family united in the love of God. Good guides and protects us. Today we live with joy, gratitude, and peace." Maintained with constancy and sincerity, this practice reinforces spiritual identity and strengthens mutual trust. Stories of childhood transformation abound in homes, where the planting of awareness is prioritized over mechanical correction or fear. Shy children, when heard and encouraged in their spiritual expression, develop security and creativity. Adolescents in crisis find, through the example of parents who pray and trust them, the courage to overcome difficult trials. Divided families that establish the habit of gratitude and joint prayer recover the sense of belonging and the joy of shared life. The goal is not to seek immediate results or control the spiritual evolution of children. Every seed planted in consciousness germinates in its own time. The essential task is not to neglect the planting, not to discourage inner seeking, and not to ridicule the sensitivity, doubt, or transcendent questions of the child or youth. Every deep conversation, every moment of prayer, every gesture of forgiveness and gratitude is inscribed in the soul's memory and creates a solid foundation for adult life. Ultimately, spiritual parenting consists of accompanying the awakening of the Christ within each young family member, being a humble witness and guide of their unique process, and trusting that the light sown in the home will become light for the world. In this way, the family fulfills its essential mission, to be a seedbed of awareness, a beacon of love, and an inexhaustible source of hope for generations to come. Chapter 12. The Luminous Home, Testimony and Projection into the World. The natural culmination of spiritual life in the home is its radiation beyond its walls, reaching and transforming the immediate environment and ultimately the world. A home where the Christ within has been recognized, cultivated, and practiced cannot remain anonymous or indifferent. The peace, joy, and prosperity experienced within the family almost effortlessly become a visible blessing for those around them. Thus, the luminous home becomes a living testimony and a silent seed of social transformation, fulfilling a mission of far greater reach than is often imagined. In times of collective crisis, when uncertainty, fear, and division seem to dominate the social climate, the role of the spiritually awakened family becomes even more crucial. The home can and must be a refuge and source of inspiration, first for its members, but also for neighbors, friends, colleagues, and anyone who crosses its path. Hospitality, the ability to welcome, listen, and share, the strength to endure without despair, and silent optimism in the face of adversity are concrete forms of service that require no extraordinary material resources, only the inner willingness to open the door and the heart. A luminous home is not necessarily one without problems or challenges, but one where tests are faced with faith, humility, and creativity, without giving in to resentment, complaint, or despair. Families that cultivate shared prayer, daily gratitude, conscious blessing, and the practice of forgiveness create an atmosphere perceptible even to brief visitors. It is not words or appearances that impact others, but the silent vibration of peace and harmony, the ability to listen without judgment, to offer support without expectation, and to sustain hope in moments of collective darkness. Practical guidance for projecting the home's light into the world begins with the practice of remote blessing. The act of blessing is not limited by physical presence or geographic distance. Every day, at the end of the day or the beginning of a new one, dedicate a few moments to bless in thought and prayer those in need, distant relatives, friends in difficulty, unknown neighbors, or even leaders, communities, and entire nations. Silently affirm, I envelop name or group in the light of Christ. I declare peace, healing, and prosperity for them. I know that God's goodness acts wherever a thought of love is sent. This simple exercise, practiced consistently, expands the positive influence of the home beyond any apparent limit. Opening the home to spiritual hospitality is another way to project the family's light. This does not always mean physically receiving others at home, but maintaining an attitude of openness, service, and availability to the needs of others. It could be a supportive conversation, an invitation to share a meal, a gesture of generosity towards someone in crisis, or simply holding an atmosphere of respect and trust in every encounter. Spiritual hospitality consists above all in recognizing Christ in the other and responding from inner abundance to life's concrete needs. Intercessory prayer for the community and the world constitutes the ultimate act of projection for the luminous home. Beyond ideological, religious, or cultural differences, every family can become a nucleus of prayer for peace, justice, and human prosperity. A simple exercise is to gather the family once a week to pray together for specific situations or people in need. We ask for peace in our neighborhood, healing for those who suffer, guidance for our leaders, and strength for those working for the common good. This practice, beyond immediate results, strengthens the awareness of unity and shared responsibility for the world's destiny. Examples of transformative homes abound in communities that have overcome crises thanks to the silent and persevering testimony of families committed to love and truth. In times of war, illness, or economic hardship, it has often been the light of a single home, a refuge of prayer, generosity, and joy that ignited hope in others, modeled reconciliation, service, and forgiveness, and demonstrated the true power of Christ acting in daily life. A guide to keeping the home as a beacon of light can be summarized in the following steps. Dedicate a weekly moment to affirm together, we consecrate this home to the service of God and humanity. May the peace, wisdom, and love cultivated here be a blessing to all who touch our lives. Maintain a simple altar, a lit candle, or any symbol that reminds the family of its higher purpose. Practice daily gratitude and conscious blessing, not only among members, but for everyone who comes into contact with the home, even briefly. The luminous home seeks no recognition or external reward. It knows that every seed sown returns multiplied, and that true prosperity lies in giving, sharing, and serving. In times of crisis, when the world needs living examples of faith, hope, and charity, the family that has made Christ its center becomes, without intention, a seed of social transformation, a silent testimony of God's kingdom manifesting on earth. Thus, the ultimate mission of the luminous home is to radiate, serve, and bless.
Amen.
Wherever a family lives from the Christ within, the entire world receives, even unknowingly, a new opportunity for rebirth and peace.